Hey everybody, it's Matt. Welcome back to the Journey Church podcast. If you haven't yet, be sure to subscribe to this podcast so you can automatically get our weekly episodes. And you might want to go ahead and subscribe to our Journey YouTube channel as well. You'll find messages, music, interviews, inspiring stories, and more for you all right there. Now, I hope this episode helps you take your next step in following Jesus.
If you guys weren't with us last week, that's okay. We're going to talk about a few concepts and I'm going to cover a few things, but you'll be able to catch up and be right there with us. No worries. So we're in this series called Struggle Bus. Last week, I basically talked about being on the struggle bus. Maybe you take a ride on that, or maybe sometimes the bus just hits you and smacks you and you didn't see it coming. And how do you respond to the struggle bus? How do you respond when you get hit or when you're riding on it to get back up and to keep doing life well? The thing we talked about last week is that you need to change the story you tell. That the story you tell in your head is often one of defeat rather than one of trust. You try to tell a story of control rather than trust. Those stories you tell in the midst of that struggle are what determine how you act. So today, I want to extend upon that topic just a little bit. And here's what I know about this topic today. Everybody in the room is gonna get this topic today. We are often on the struggle bus because we can't seem to change something about ourselves. Have you ever been there? Like I have. I'm going to share with you a few things in my life and a few big areas of my life where change is hard to make. But if you're like anything like me, and I know you are because you're human, you've got some things that you want to be better in your life. Maybe it's an area of discipline for you. Maybe it's in your health. You know that you need to improve something about your health, and you've tried all these different things, but nothing seems to change. If you're like me, and I'll talk about this more later, but I need to get better at my flexibility. Everybody in first service thought I was lying. I'm not joking you. This is as far as I can go. That's it. And you're lying. No, that's it. I've got to work on my flexibility. You think that's such a small thing? No. Listen. All the PTs in the room are saying, yeah, that's a big deal. When you get older, guess what? You can't get up off the floor when you fall unless you're flexible. And guess what? This guy wants to be able to do at 90, get up off the floor. You know what I'm saying? So I've got to work on that. It's what I'm working on. I got to get better at that. Maybe it's in an area of your emotions. If you're like me, maybe you get anxious, right? And you try not to be anxious, but every time you try not to be anxious, you actually make yourself more anxious, and you find that you just ramp up the anxiety over and over, right? And you're trying really hard, but your anxieties, and you wish you could change that. Maybe it's with your money. Maybe you're like me. Guys, I just spent another $5 yesterday at Dunkin' Donuts. I can't stop. I know some of you got your own thing, but for me, there's something about getting on the Dunkin' app and just getting a coffee and working toward a free one. And it takes me so long to get to a free one, but I'm willing to spend the $25 it takes to get me a free coffee. What is that about, right? Do I want to be able to change that? Yes. You know why? Because that $25 could probably be used for something better in my life than just giving me a coffee that I can make at home for much cheaper. Why do I do it? Because I can't seem to change it. I keep trying to change it and I can't. Maybe for some of you in the room, you want a deeper faith. Like me, you want a deeper faith. Maybe it's about, you want to be at church more often, but it seems like your schedule is just stacked with stuff every weekend, and you're like, man, we should get there. I want to get there, and you can't quite make it. Or maybe if you're like me, you're like, man, I got to improve my prayer life. I'm not very focused in on where God is during the day. Like, I get up in the morning, I just forget about Him all day long, and man, I'm just running. Maybe if I could stop and remember that He's with me and pray a little bit, and I try every day to do that, and I'm just not very good at it. It doesn't seem to be working. Or maybe you're just like, I don't even know what this faith thing is, but I don't know where to start. And you would love to have faith, but you're like, I don't even know how to get faith or where it's at. And you're trying to change, but you don't know what to do. And man, you're stuck there. And there's one other area that I find that maybe you guys can relate with. Maybe it's in the area of your relationships. Maybe it's with your own children. Like, My 13-year-old daughter, she corrected my math this morning. I was saying, I would love to have the kind of relationship with all my children that as they leave home, they still want to be my friend. But my youngest daughter, I now only have, she tells me 4.5 years left with her. I said 6, and I just did the math wrong. But she's like, Dad, it's only 4.5 you have left with me. I'm like, oh, great. That's wonderful. Less time than I thought. Like, I want to have the kind of relationship. But am I changing my habits in the evening? Do I still go to my room and just look at my phone and watch Instagram Reels or watch this TV show by myself? Yes. Why do I do that? I need to change it. I want to change, but I keep trying. It's not changing. Or maybe it's with your spouse. These are people we live with. We want to have a more intentional conversation with them. We want to be more vulnerable with them. We want to share more of our life. But what do? We tend to do things that don't help us change and move toward that. Maybe it's through the people at work. You want to have a stronger working relationship, to trust them, to do better work with them. But the things that you do, it seems like when you try to change, it just falls right back where it was. Like, am I the only one that's feeling frustrated by the fact that there are things about I know I'm not. Listen, I'm going to tell you right now what goes on in my head, and you can tell your own story. Remember we talked about the stories we tell last week. Well, here's a story I tell myself and why I get on the struggle bus when it comes to things I want to change but don't seem to change. Here's what I start to say. Change is frustrating. I'm trying to change. I can't change. I must be a failure. Because this is a really simple thing not to spend more money at Dunkin' Donuts, and yet I keep doing it. I'm obviously a failure at managing my money. I will never change, so I might as well quit trying. Might as well go all out on Dunkin' this month. Am I right? Like, that's where my mind goes, and that's not the way to get off a struggle bus. Because here's what I know. The things that I want to change are things that probably should change. And listen, all of us in the room, listen, our intentions are not bad. A lot of us blame ourselves because I must not be motivated to change. No, I think we're all very motivated to change. I just think we're doing it the wrong way. I think the reason why we're on the struggle bus a lot is because we don't do change the right way. In fact, I'm going to start with a phrase that you're going to look at and you'll be like, Jarrod, that doesn't make any sense. That's okay. I'm okay with you not making, it's not going to make sense right here, but you need to stop trying to change. I think trying is the wrong method. I think there's another method. And you're like, what is there besides trying? I'm going to tell you right now. Trying is what we do over and over and over again that leads us to failure. And there's actually a better way to do change. And it can get us where we want to go. But we're going to have to change the way we think about change before it to happen. So I'm going to talk about a section of Scripture that helps us understand this. We talked about Paul last week. We're going to talk about Paul again. Paul wrote a letter to the people in Corinth. We're going to look at his first letter this morning. Now, here's the thing about Corinth that I think is cool. When you think about the city of Corinth and what Paul was writing to them, Corinth was this really commercial area. It was a rich city. They had a lot of things going on, a lot of distractions. In 1 Corinthians chapters 1 through 8, Paul basically talks about all these things that the Corinthian church was distracted by. And they were distracted by things going on in the government. And they were distracted by things going on within their families. And they were distracted by all these different things that were leading them away from the life that was good, right? In fact, did you know that the Corinthians, they're the ones that hosted the Isthmian Games? You've like, well, I've heard of the Olympics. It's kind of like the Olympics. They were games and they were very, very popular. In fact, all the people in Corinth, they hosted those games. They went to watch them. Everybody knew about these games. So I'm setting this up because in chapter 9, as Paul's talked to all of them about the distractions that are leading them away from what's good, Paul says, here's a way you can change course. I'm going to give you the secret to moving your life back to what's good and to focus back on the good things. Here's the way to change your life to where you want to be. And he uses this metaphor of the games. And I just think it's genius. Paul he's a great teacher. Here's where he starts with this verse. He says, do you know that in a race, all the runners run, but only one gets the prize? Run in such a way as to get the prize. Anybody runners out there? We're going to talk about running a lot, okay? So get ready. If you're not a runner, sorry, you're going to miss it. Here's the thing. Everybody gets it. Like we all love watching. You know why we love watching the Olympics? Because people are competing for a prize. It's like the prize. And here's what Paul tries to put on their radar. He's like, listen. When runners run, they run to compete. Some of you in this room know what competition's all about. You compete every single day, and nobody else knows you're competing against them. You do that thing in your head when you're at work, and you've got that project going, and your project has nothing to do with the person next to you and their project, but you're in your head going, I'm going to be better, and I'm going to beat them, and I'm going to be faster at it than them. And you're just competing. And it's some of you are competitive with your family. Like you win at Scrabble, and you are on top of the world. You lose at Scrabble, and you want to rip the game in half and throw it at people, right? You know which ones you are. Nobody likes to play with you. No, I'm just saying, here's the deal. Paul's trying to get us to focus on something that we often forget about in our life. You know that good thing that you intend to change, that you want to change? Paul just wants to remind us of something. That's a really, really good thing you're chasing. It's a prize. You should run after that prize as if you're racing other people for it, and if you get it, you get it. That's how you should run after the things you want, the things that are good. That thing that you want your family to be like, the way you want to use your money generously, the way you want to serve the community, the way you just want to be joyful in the midst of hard times, the way you want to respond when things don't go well, all of that things you intend, listen, it's a prize. Do not forget to run hard in this race. It's worth running after. And you're saying, that sounds like trying. It does sound like trying until you read this next verse. And then Paul drops on us what is better than trying. You ready? Oh gosh, everybody's like, yeah, this is going to be great. It's not going to be that great, guys. You're going to hate it. You're going to hate it. You ready? Verse 26, I think it is. 25. Everyone who competes in the games goes into, say it, strict training. You know what you all just did? You're like, I ain't doing that. But listen, I'm a runner. I've been running for 8 years. I didn't want to be a runner. I was a basketball player. Basketball players don't run for fun. We run to dunk, right? That's why we run. We run to score. There's a real reason why we run. I know some of you know the jokes, right? Oh, you'll see me running. There'll be a policeman behind him. That's the only time I'm ever running, right? I know all the running jokes. I get it. But listen, here's what I know about running, though, that I've learned in 8 years. It takes training. You don't get to be a good runner by just trying to run one day. Let's do this. Let's do a thought experiment. Everybody, we're going to meet here today at 2 p.m. Just bring your running shoes. We're all going to go for a run, right? We're just going to try. You know what? We're going to try to run a marathon today. We'll run 26 miles a day. Everybody willing to try? Some of you are like, yeah, I'll try it. I've been running for a while, right? But others of you are like, I haven't run in a long time. I'm not trying. You know why you're not trying? Because you're smart. You aren't trying because you know that trying to run a marathon without training is stupid. Why is it that we all understand that metaphor and we don't understand that when it comes to our attitude about giving or forgiving or being joyful or not being anxious or being grateful or being loving to people who hurt us? Do you believe that you can just try to be those things and you'll be those things tomorrow? Well, I'm going to learn how to love my boss better. He is a jerk, but I'm going to love him and I'm going to serve him really well. And you walk in on Monday morning and what do? As soon as he says those words, you're like, oh, I hate him. I ain't doing anything for him today. You tried really hard. Listen, I try really, really hard not to go to Dunkin'. I'm going to keep coming back to this because it's the thing I've got to change. I've got to train myself not to go to Dunkin' when I feel like I need a pick-me-up. Oh man, it's going to be a hard day. I know what I need. I need an extra large Dunkin' Midnight with mocha. That's what I need. That'll be better. And I'll spend $5 on that. Even though I can make this at home for 30 cents. I'm going to spend $5. Why do I need to spend that $5 on it? Because I'm not training myself to move that money to a different place. I'm just trying really hard. Here's the problem with trying that Paul points out. Trying ends up in failure. People who run the race well know that they must train well. Did you know that Olympians train for 4 years for one race? That makes no sense, does it? And you're like, yeah, but they have the World Games. Man, nobody cares about the World Games. They don't do that. They do that in between the Olympic Games just to see where everybody's at. Right? It's a chance to see if I'm on pace. Only thing cares about is in 4 years, I'm going to win that. I train. I don't just wake up one morning and go, I think I'll try to win the 100-meter dash today. Shouldn't be a problem. That's dumb. It's the same thing for all the things you want to change in your life right now. So here's how Paul ends it up. You ready? He says this, therefore, since it takes strict training, therefore I do not run like someone running aimlessly. I do not fight like a boxer beating the air. Let's go back. Let's meet at 2 o'clock to run again. Everybody in? We're going to run. Let's change the thought experiment. I'm going to lead you guys on a run today. You trust me? Here's your first question. Hey, Jarrod, how far are we running? Don't worry about it. We'll know when we get there. You excited about that? Nope. Hey, Jarrod, how fast are we going to run? Hey, don't worry about it. Just keep pace with me. Hey, Jarrod, how long is it going to take? Don't worry about it. We'll just be gone as long as it takes. You know what that's called? That's running aimlessly. Nobody's going to join you in that. That doesn't sound like fun except the one runner in here that's like, that sounds like a blast. It does. We'll meet at 2, okay? But here's the thing. You don't get to that point unless you've trained. And Paul says, this you got to understand. He's not telling them that they need to do something he's not doing. Paul's just saying, hey, you got to go into strict training. This is why I don't run aimlessly in my life. This is why I'm not like a boxer beating the air. You know, the visual I get is of the big dude that the little kid comes at and they're going to fight. And the little kid comes at him and he just puts his hand on his head, right, to hold him back. And the kid goes, right, and can't reach him. Just beat the air. Why do you think that we spend so much time trying to change ourselves rather than training ourselves to be something different? Let me tell you why I do it. Ready? It's because training reveals our weaknesses. And I don't like that. Because if I were going to be honest with you this morning, and I am, I would have to look at you and tell you that the reason I don't want to train myself not to go to Dunkin' Donuts to get coffee is because I'm selfish. See, training showed me that. Trying lets me excuse myself. See, if I just try hard not to go to Dunkin', oh man, I'm trying really hard not to go, but I'm going to have to go today. I can excuse myself from my selfishness. I don't know what it is for you that you want to excuse, but here's what my bet is. When you see that word strict training, you back off because you immediately know, I don't want to get into training because that might show me where I'm not good. You don't want to train yourself to be generous because you might find out you're more selfish than you think. You don't want to train yourself to be forgiving because then you might have to let somebody off the hook. You don't want to train yourself in these other areas that you're all thinking about because you're scared of talking about what you'll find behind the training. Because if I commit to a training program, I have to commit to the fact that I'm not strong enough yet. You ready for the good news? That's why you train. Training is not for the strong. It's for the weak. Training is for those of us who are not able to yet, but want to be able to. You know what's good news? Going for a run and finding out you could only run 30 seconds. You know why that's good news? Because now you know where to begin your training. I got to get to 60 seconds. I got to get to a mile. I got to get to, you know what you don't do when you train to run? You don't start out by running a marathon. You start really, really small. You guys want to run a marathon in 5 months? Here's what you do. This week, you run 4 times. The first 3 times, you only run 5 minutes each. Tomorrow, run 5 minutes. Tuesday, run 5 minutes. Take a break on Wednesday. You've already done amazing work. You've run for 10 minutes this week. Thursday, run 5 minutes. On Friday, you know what? Run 7. And you know what you do the next week? You do the same program, but you add 1 minute to that Friday run, and you go up to 8 minutes. And then next week, you add maybe a minute to the other ones, and then you go up to 9. And by the end of a 5 or 6 month period, you know what you're going to be able to do? Run for a really, really long time. But if you had never started training, you would have never found out where you needed strength, and you never been able to carry the load of running a marathon. I'm not trying to convince you to run a marathon. I'm trying to get you to apply this metaphor to whatever it is you want to change in your life. You didn't get to be where you are today by not training. You're like, yeah, but I'm not really training myself. Yeah, exactly. The training you're not doing is training you to be the person you are today. And if you want to be a different kind of person, you'll have to train yourself to be a different kind of person. You ready? My flexibility. That's all I got. In 30 years, though, I want to be able to touch my toes, get up off the ground. For 48 years, I've trained myself not to be flexible. I've done nothing for my flexibility. You know what I got to do in the next 30 years? To train. I've got to train myself. I've got to do the training. Because here's what happens in training. Training shows us our weaknesses, and we work on them, 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 and eventually you get to the point where you're stronger. You know what God wants for you? He wants you to be strong. Some of you are like, why can't God just zap me? You remember those stories I talked about last week? And if you weren't here last week, let me just show you. Remember the stories we tell ourselves of control? Let me bring this back to bear. I tell stories of control. God is my genie. People are the tools I use to get what I want. Right? This is a story we often tell ourselves. The stories of control. You know what you're doing right now? In your mind, you've got that thing that you want to change about yourself. And you're trying to figure out any way to change yourself besides doing the training, because you don't want to do the hard work of training, and you don't want to take it a long time. You want to bypass the long time, and you want to get the immediate results. So you're going to be like, God, just change me. Change my heart. Make me not selfish tomorrow, and I will not go to Dunkin' this week. You change my heart. You do that, and I won't go to Dunkin'. That is the opposite of what God wants from you. God wants you to be strong. So he's not going to just zap you into what you need to be. He wants you to build the character and the muscle to be able to do hard things with him standing beside you, supporting you. Why does he want you to be strong? Because here's what I'm going to show you that is probably the game changer for a lot of you in the room. Training requires trust. And listen, a lot of you don't trust God. So you want to try real hard, and then God magically make you something that you're not working for. Because then you don't have to trust this process that it takes to become the kind of person that's generous. Because what it takes to be the kind of person that's generous means you'll have to train yourself not to be selfish, which means you'll have to come up with ways to not spend your money on yourself and spend it on other people. And that takes work in here. But you know what I have to do to trust God? Is when he says, hey, I actually want you to give more than you receive. I'd like you to be able to be generous to people, and your heart be thinking about them before you think about yourself. I want you to be able to do that. So would you just trust me and start giving some of your money away? Would you start doing that? Hey, would you rein in your spending over here, Jarrod? I know your Dunkin' Donuts feels like it's just helping you out a lot, but really, you're spending about $25 a month on something that you could spend that money elsewhere on somebody else that may need it. See, that's training God wants for you, but that requires you to trust that what he's telling you to do will lead you to something better than what you have right now. Same thing is true for your health. Same thing is true for your anxiety. Someone in your room, you're trying to, God, just take this anxiety away. I don't want to feel this way. God, my chest gets tight. I get really worried. I clamp up. I get tight, and you got this anxious feeling. And you want God to just zap you and move it on instead of in that moment. He says hey, when you feel anxious, would you just turn around and be grateful for what you have? But God, I can't be grateful in the anxiety. No. I just want you, hey, could you trust me enough to just be grateful while you're anxious? Can you turn around and say thank you for the things that you do have? Because it requires trust to train yourself. And listen, if you're not a follower of Jesus this morning, this training concept will work. You get it. But listen, for those of you who are followers of Jesus, do you understand that all these things that we're trying to become as people, to be like Jesus in the way we love our enemies, or that the way we pray for other people, the way we serve other people, the way we give to our community, it takes training because we're not there yet. This is so good, right? And the way we learn to get there is we take small little steps to trust God, doing the things that He asks us to do. And in that training, we find out how weak we are, and we continually lean into His strength to do what we can't do for ourselves. And we find that in that process, we get stronger because He is there to support us. That's what we as Christians believe. So here's what I want to do. I want to encourage you. Let me give you a plan to take action, because I know in all of you, you got that one thing in your head that you want to change this week, and you're like, man, if I could change anything, it'd be that. Okay. Great. That's the first step. I want you to choose an area that you want to train in, not just try in this week. Okay? You know what it is. I'm not going to talk anymore about it, but you choose one area. Don't choose 5. Don't be that guy. Okay? Don't make all of us feel terrible about ourselves because you chose 5 areas. Don't do that. Just choose one. Or if you're going to choose 5, don't tell me about it. I don't want to know. Okay? Just choose one. Focus in on one area you're going to train in, not try in. Here's number 2. You got to change your approach. How do you change from trying to training? It's actually really simple. Let me give you 3 simple steps that will help you change your approach. Number 1, to train well, you need to know what it is that you need to do to get better at something. So you'll have to find somebody who's good at what you're bad at. You need to find a coach. It doesn't have to be a coach. You need to find a friend. You need to find a mentor. You need to find a person a few years ahead of you. You need to find somebody who you meet with and you talk to and you say, hey, I notice you're really good at this thing and I want to get better at it and I'm terrible at it. Could you help me train to get there? Olympic athletes do not train without a training plan and a coach. They don't just show up one day and be like, I think I'll jump a few hurdles today. I don't think I know. They get somebody who knows what they're doing, who tells them what to do, and then they go and do it. So find somebody who will help you figure out what you need to do to train to be the person you want to be. Number 2, find some training partners. You want to know why Matt talks all the time about you getting to one of these short-term group experiences? You want to know why he all the time tells you should get on one of the serving teams here to connect with people? It's because we want you to be training alongside other people. Nobody who makes it to the Olympics trains alone. Nobody goes out there on the track by themselves and just trains. No, they have training partners. And by the time they make it to the Olympics, this is so depressing in one way, but it's really awesome in another way. Can you imagine training with the person who wins the gold medal? You've been training beside them for 4 years, but you already knew that day you weren't going to beat them because you've done it like 5,000 times in practice. Every day you're like, I am a half a second behind that person. This is so bad. But guess what? When you train with really good athletes, you know what happens to you? You get better. You get better than you thought you could get because you're training with the best. So you should be training with people. Number 3. Then I want you to commit to the training plan and the training partners. I don't want you to commit to some pie-in-the-sky goal. The prize is out there. You keep the prize up here. But I want you to commit to the plan. The plan says, tomorrow I'm supposed to get up and do this for 5 minutes. Why would I even do that for 5 minutes? That doesn't seem like a lot to do. I'll just forget that part. No. Commit to the plan. It tells me I'm only supposed to stretch for 4 minutes. I guess I'm going to stretch for 4 minutes today. I'm just going to do the plan. You with me? Hey, let's go do the plan. Well, it's only 4 minutes, but that's what you're going to commit to. This is changing your approach from trying to training. And here's the last thing I want to encourage you. I hope this helps you really grab onto this. I want you to celebrate the process. And you guys, I know you've heard this before, but listen. Olympians don't get the gold medal because they celebrate at the end of the journey. They celebrated every single time they got better. And here's what I know about everybody in the room. Everybody tomorrow, on whatever you chose, you can take that one little step of, I'm going to do that thing today. Listen, if whatever it is that you're trying to do this week, if you start the process of finding somebody, you should celebrate. Dude, I found a mentor. I found a coach. I found somebody help me get a training plan. You should celebrate like crazy on that. You want to know why? Because that's training. Trying is that other thing that you do that you give yourself a pass on. Trying is making an excuse for why you didn't make it. Trying is making yourself feel terrible and like a failure because you didn't. I just can't be generous. I just can't stop spending money on myself. I just can't. No. Training is celebrating the process of finding out where you're weak and then working on it. Because where you find your weakness is where you find God standing next to you saying, I know you got this. Just take the next step. Just follow the program. Just do the next small thing. I know you want to be here, but right now, just do this one. And when you get strong enough to do this one really well, I'm going to ask you to do this one. I don't need to think about that one yet, but just do this one. But when you get to the next one, it's going to feel like this. Guys, training increases your capacity to be strong in all the areas you're weak in, but you have to celebrate the process of training. And listen, when you celebrate the process, you'll find yourself putting trust where it belongs, not in your ability, but in the God who is standing beside you. And training requires trust every step of the way, but you have to take the little step. Let me pray for you. God, I pray for all of us in the room. We all want to have better things in life. We want looking at things, God, that you have shown us are better, and we often feel like failures. God, we keep trying. Would you help us to change our approach this week to training? For those of us in the room who struggle with anxiety or with forgiveness, or we struggle with our past, or we struggle with our health, or whatever it is we're struggling with, God, would you give us a clear way forward that we'll just keep taking the small steps you give us. And God, with you beside us, we will celebrate the process because we know that training ourselves, there's a prize worth it at the end. God, thank you for the grace that you give us through Jesus, that when we do mess it up and we don't get it right, you're standing beside us to help us get it back up and move forward. Help us to lean into you this week for that. In your son's name I pray it.
Hey, if you'd like more content like this, subscribe to our YouTube channel and download our Journey app to access all of our recent message content. And our app is the easiest way to share this content with a friend. For more information on our church or to find our app or our YouTube channel, just visit journeycalway.com. That's journeycalway.com. Thanks for listening.